doing today, sir?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Nice to meet you.
So nice to meet you.
How you enjoying Metropolis?
So far, I love it. A lot of good people.
So I'm going to ask a couple questions, and then we'll take it over to the audience. Let anybody's got questions, just raise your hand. We'll have Supergirl walking around. She'll come to you with the microphone. So, I just wanted to start off with career. When you first got into acting, what was the whole process of leading up to your actual entry into the field of acting?
Well, it was kind of weird actually because my parents were both actors, and so unlike a lot of actors I know, I knew it was something that people actually did, but the consequence of that are there are a lot of actors walking around my house, and some of them were quite famous, and I wasn't impressed by them at all. They're just a bunch of like drunken grown-ups, smoking cigarettes and telling funny stories. I mean, they were entertaining, but I wasn't like a big fan or anything. I liked, seeing good work. But it was weird because like a lot of the times at my dinner table conversation was about, about performances and plays and movies and actors. And, I just thought it was kind of normal. Anyway, and then I discovered in high school, it was something I had an aptitude for because I did a play that my parents came to see, and they said it took us 20 minutes to realize it was you. And I thought, yes, I fooled them. I pulled the wool over their eyes. But one of my fondest memories was when I was a little kid. My dad would go do what they call summer stock, which is these plays that happen around in the summer. And this is back in the day before everybody was terrified of everything. And I would climb around in the the lighting booth, and it was just such a magical place because it felt like we were pulling this big kind of caper on the audience, because it was all make-believe. And of course there were a lot of like really cute apprentice girls who I would sit in their lap and kind of nuzzle in their bosom. They thought I was cute, so that made me like, but I really didn't know that it was something that I didn't know if I had the personality to do it because, there's so much rejection, it's so much uncertainty, and so much, times where you think that your career is over, you have to do something else. And it takes either someone really stubborn or really persistent or really stupid or all three to withstand that kind of thing. So that's kind of, and then after school I went to New York and, auditioned for a million things and finally got to start working.
And of course, one of your first most memorable roles is on the TV series Wings. So. Enjoyed watching you on there with Steve Weber, and you being the straight-laced character to his complete opposite. So, what was some memories from that series you could share?
Mostly that it was. This is something I probably shouldn't admit, but if you asked people all over the globe what would be the things that made up the perfect job and put them into, I was going to say a computer, I suppose I should say AI. The job it would spit out is sitcom actor. It is a fantastic way to live because the schedules, you work for 3 weeks and then you have a week off. So, for me, it was amazing because my kids were of an age where I could coach Little League, I could coach soccer, I never missed a school play, I was home for dinner, so it gave me the opportunity to make a good living and do a job that was really fun and be a dad. So, I had a lot of wonderful memories of it. That said, I did feel like I should have enjoyed it a little bit more because, in a sitcom, even if it's excellent, even if it's amazing, you do this much of life. You never go over here and you never go over there. And some actors like me are taught that, it's your job to explore every last corner of the human experience. So you want to go over there and you want to go over there. And when you're on a sitcom, you don't get to do that. I was lucky enough to be able to do that, when I had time off to do some other things. And, I've, should not would, my career's been long and successful, so I have nothing to complain about. But it was, the cliche is that it was like a little family, and that cliche held true. It was great.
Awesome. And of course, I have to talk about your role in Superman the Animated Series, voice of Clark and Superman. The process of that show in terms of finding out about the role being available, the process that you went through in order to land that role, how did that come about?
It was, I mean, this is such a lame story, really. I was on Wings, and one of our writer, executive producers was married to a wonderful actress named Arlene Sorkin. And Arlene came up to me one day and said, "Hey, would you be interested in auditioning for the role of Superman for the cartoons?" And I was like, "Sure, I don't know." And full disclosure, to my shame, I was not like a comic book kid. I was not obsessed with Superman or any other superheroes. Anyway, so I drove out to Warner Brothers, and I went to this studio, and I met these really nice people, and especially Andrea Romano, who directed all these things, and it was spectacular. Yes, good morning. And
I read some stuff. Oop, my mic broke. I can use my theater voice. Or did I mute it?
He's coming with a new one for you.
Oh, I broke it. Anyway, so I go to Warner Brothers, and I read for it, and Andrea said, "All right, buddy, just calm down a little bit. You don't have to do, I was doing
something really fancy." And so I read it a few times, and they basically said, "You're hired." And I was like, "Oh, okay, sure." I had no idea what I was getting into. And also, full disclosure, I didn't realize, like, I thought that I was doing a cute little, Saturday morning cartoon show for a bunch of kids. I did not realize how important Superman was as an iconic figure in American culture and really world culture. And it's become, when I think about it, it's even more than that, because Superman, I think, represents something that we all feel. We all think that, and I think we do possess the ability to do something heroic, to be a hero, and the right circumstances have to present themselves for us to do that heroic thing. And I think that Superman represents something that we all feel inside us. So I think that's why he's become such an archetypal character. Did I answer that question, or did I just blabber?
Now, one series, unfortunately, that was very short-lived that I thoroughly enjoyed was the reboot of The Fugitive. And then they go and cancel for stupid reasons, I guess. But that show was, I just really loved your take on Dr. Kimball and, making the role your own as opposed to, what it was with the movie and the original series. So what was it like being on that series?
Well, I mean, it was incredible. First of all, sort of weird trivia. My dad was on the original Fugitive twice in two different roles. They liked him so much the first time they killed him, I think. Then he came back as somebody else. But that was kind of I'm still sort of bitter and sad that got canceled, because it was kind of a dream job, because not only was there a lot of interesting character work and acting work to do, but it was also like being a kid. I mean, they were constantly dangling me off stuff and throwing me off of buildings. So all these really cool stunts that I got to do, which it's just it reminded me of. I mean, the thing is, kids are all actors, right? You look out the window and you see a bunch of kids playing, and they are seriously into something. And they're making rules about, you're the bad guy, I'm the good guy, you're the princess, he's the, the clown. And they play really hard and really seriously, and they do their own stunts. And that's the way I felt about The Fugitive. It was really, really great, and I was sad it was canceled.
And two other great series were, of course, The Nine and Eyes, that were also short-lived series. It's like all these great series that you're in, and they come short. So it's like just so many memorable roles that you've had. Now, one thing I wanted to touch on was when I was doing some research on your acting history, there was a movie that I came across from the mid-90s that
Here we go.
it was one of those when you go to Blockbuster and you don't know what you want. And it was one where you played the iconic role of Dr. Jekyll and Mrs. Hyde. Opposite
Ms. Hyde.
Miss Hyde. Opposite Sean Young. Can you talk a little bit about that role?
Well, look, you know, I had not done a full-on, you know, raucous comedy movie, and I thought that I would, you know, take a big swing at it, and it didn't work out. You know, it really didn't work out very well. But you know, I will say that they paid me quite well, and I was able to buy my farm in Vermont, which I still have. So there's a silver lining.
It's a cult classic movie. I mean, I recommend if you haven't seen it, find a copy and watch it. It's interesting. And the fact that Sean is in it makes it even more interesting. So.
Well, she's an interesting character, and you know, I got along with her extremely well. She had a terrible reputation of being crazy, but I actually did something that I kind of went out on a limb when I first met her, and I went up to her, and I'm about to say a bad word, so close your ears if you don't want to hear it. And I said, Sean, it's so nice to meet you. I said, listen, you know all that crazy shit that you do that drives people crazy? You don't have to do any of that with me. You're going to be safe. We're going to have a great time. And she looked at me like I was insane, and then she was a doll. It was just what she needed. A few boundaries, and she was great.
You don't bring up the Catwoman incident.
No, I did not.
That's a good thing not to.
I actually worked with her again. I worked with her again in a really interesting TV movie called Witness to the Execution, which was about a guy that sells the television rights to his own execution, which is, I'll tell you, this is an interesting side story about this. We were shooting at the Houston Astrodome when it was still there, and they built this enormous platform with this huge electric chair for this moment where the guy is on television being electrocuted. And I was sitting with some people at like 3 o'clock in the morning on the football field. And I did that weird thing where suddenly, apparently I had fallen asleep, but I woke up and I was like, where the hell am I? What's going on? I actually took a nap on the 50-yard line of the Houston Astrodome.
Another memorable role you had was The Sopranos, the one season that you were on there. Such an extremely, popular TV series. What was your experience on that series like in that role?
Well, it's funny about things like that because, when you go to work, you're just going to work. You're trying to, you learn your lines. You're trying to hit your marks. You're trying to figure out the scene with your fellow actors and the director. So you're just working. You're not thinking like, I'm in one of the most iconic TV shows in history. This is amazing. If you do that, you're not going to do the scene very well. So it was just like going to work. But, I had worked with David Chase, who created the show, on his the first TV show he created, a show called Almost Grown, which was a fantastic show. It was way ahead of its time. It was on CBS, and they were scratching their heads like, what the hell is this show? I didn't know what it was. Anyway, David, I like to joke with him. I say, it's funny, I worked with you before you were a genius and after you were a genius. But he very kindly wrote that part for me because, we had wanted to work together. But he's the kind of guy, he's one of those writers who you have to be careful what you say about him because, so the original, the guy's name was T.J. Dolan, right? T.J. And he remembered that my actual name is not Timothy James Daly, it's James Timothy Daly. So he actually created new pages and changed the name to J.T. Dolan so the initials would line up. And then he had me from like Morristown, New Jersey, and he remembered that I grew up in Mahwah, New Jersey, so he changed it to Mahwah, New Jersey. He was always taking little pieces of my own life and putting them into the story.
It was also great, more recently, to see you pop up in The Boys as a kind of like a return to the superhero genre.
Starlight Papa.
And then you're starring on with your wife, so that's.
Well, that's been over for a few years, but we are. So this is how. Listen, I have such an extraordinary life. You guys have to understand. I'm like the luckiest man on the planet. But not only did I get to, do 6 years of a TV show with the woman who relatively recently became my wife, Tay Leone, who should, if you don't know who she is, look her up. She's amazing. So, I got on this TV show, we fell in love, we've been together for 12 years, and now we're about to do a show together again called Newlyweds when we're actually married. So that'll be on NBC in the fall. And it's an old-fashioned live audience sitcom. It's going to be really great. So, thanks.
Open it up to the audience now. Just again, raise your hand. Supergirl will come right to you.
Is there anything you wanted to do in this role of Superman that you didn't get to do?
More. I would love to be able to do it again and do it more. I think I have a better, I'm a very slow or a late bloomer, and I come to understand things after the fact. So I understand more now about the role and about how to play it than I did when I was actually doing it. So I'd like to do it again, but I don't think the chances are high that will happen, but that would be it.
There's always the animated movies they do.
You never know.
You'd be a logical choice.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Hello, Tim. I have a question for you about the animated series. What was it like working with Mike Farrell and Shelley Fabares?
I mean, they're fantastic, It's like, the thing is that I can't remember if I actually worked with Shelley. The thing about these shows is that every once in a while the whole cast is in the same room, and that's fantastic because it's so funny and you get to see how people work and what they, some people get very animated with their bodies and some people are very quiet and do all with their voice. But a lot of the time, you're basically just showing up and doing your part. So you're not always with, the actors that it looks like you're working with. But I know I worked with Mike, who's a great guy, and I had a mentor who was his roommate in New York when they first got to New York, so I knew a little bit about him. And Shelley's just, she's a doll. They're both great.
Hi, Tim. When you were on Wings, when the show ended, did you keep any of the props? Did you steal anything from the set? We won't tell.
Oh gosh. Well, that's, I don't remember. I don't actually remember if I did. I don't think I did. But I will tell you a funny story about stealing stuff from the set. So, my sister is a very well-known actress named Tim Daly. So, when I was still in college, and Tyne was just a kind of a workaday actor, she was doing a play at the Burt Reynolds Dinner Theater in Jupiter, Florida, and I was doing a play at the Royal Poinciana Playhouse in Palm Beach, Florida. And I went to see her in her play, and she came to closing night of my play, and it was this play where I played a Russian soldier. It took place in the 20s or something like that. Anyway, I had this great costume, and I had this hat that was made of this tight knit black wool. It was really cool. And Tyne came backstage afterwards and said, "Timmy, you were great," and all this stuff. She was very sweet. And she said, "Listen, that's a great hat. You got to steal the hat." I said, "Tyne, this is my first professional show." I said, "Tyne, I'm not stealing the hat. This is my first, union job. I'm not doing it." She goes, No, you got to steal the hat." "Tyne," I said, "I'm not stealing the freaking hat." And she goes, she said, "Listen to me. It is an actor's obligation to steal articles of their costume that they love." And I said, "Not doing it." So cut to about 6 or 7 years later, and I'm making my Broadway debut, and it's, the show is a big hit, and we go to this restaurant called Sardi's, which is where the traditional opening night parties take place for Broadway plays. And I'm there with a bunch of family and stuff, and Tyne is there, and she gives me this box. I open the box. It's the hat. She stole it and saved it for years for the appropriate moment. Now that's a good big sister.
Do you have any stories about working with Tony Shalhoub or what he was like?
Tony, I mean, I love that guy so much. He's hard to resist because he's so sweet. He has this aura about him. He's just such a kind and generous person. It's funny, I used to call him Ethnos because he played all the ethnic characters. Right? He played Italian, he played Arabic, he played Jewish, from those countries. But yeah, I have nothing but good memories of him. The one thing I remember about the show, though, was that there was an actor who was a very famous acting teacher in New York City named William Hickey, and he had a voice like this, and he played this character who was going to Las Cruces, New Mexico.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, you remember that? Yeah, and he and Tony had this scene together, and every time they had a scene together on a shoot night, I would be like, oh no, because it would take 3 hours because Tony couldn't do it without laughing. He would try as hard as he could, and he just would break up the whole time and had to do it over and over and over again. I don't know if they ever got one where he wasn't cracking up.
Okay, Superman, but you're the only one who's had his son also do it. What was that like?
Oh, it's the best. Andrea called me up and she said, we're doing a direct-to-DVD movie or something like that, and she said, Superman isn't prominent in it. How would you feel about Sam doing it? I was like, are you kidding me? Grab him, he's great. Sam should be doing some of these also, by the way. He should be doing voiceovers because he's a great actor and an even better man. He's kind of my role model. So, yeah, that was really an honor.
Okay, so which one do you prefer, stage acting, voice acting, or TV, and which one's the hardest to be as far as preparation?
Oh gosh, well, I think I would have to say stage acting is the thing I love most because, like this room today, you're in a room with a bunch of strangers and there's kind of a special energy and you get to share it with each other, and whatever happens is, except for those people who are recording with their phones. I'm just teasing. But in the theater, it lives in people's memories. So everybody has a different memory, and also once you start, no one can edit your performance. You are in complete control over it. But the problem with doing theater, because I'd spent all of 2024 pretty much working the theater in New York, is that is really the schedule. Because friends will say, hey, we're going out of town for the weekend, want to come? I can't. We're going out to dinner. I say, no, want to come? I can't. It's because that you're kind of bound to this schedule of doing all these shows. But I love the fact that you get more rehearsal. You can sort of go deeper into the character that you play. That said, like I said before, sitcom actor is the perfect job because you can still have a life. You can make a good living, and it's really fun, and you get to do it in front of a live audience. So, however it's edited afterwards, you have a sense of like, that joke really killed, and that joke really sucked, despite the fact that they boosted up the laugh track for the air date. Anyway, so I think. Sorry. Voice acting is so easy. Well, I shouldn't say that. You still have to deliver a performance, but you can literally like get out of bed in your jammies and go someplace and do it. It's not that big a process. You have to have hair and makeup and wardrobe, and there's not a million technicians standing around telling you to stand here, and the lights hitting you there. So it's really fun, and it's really pretty simple.
Right around the same time as you did the animated series, you also did the Stephen King adaptation, Storm of the Century.
Oh, yeah.
Are you like a big King fan, or what was it with that attracted you to that particular role for that movie?
I just thought it was an incredible, dilemma. Like I just loved the script. I think it was the first time he wrote something just directly for the screen. And, the story of, potentially sacrificing your child to save a bunch of other people is this incredible, moral and ethical dilemma. And who would want to be put in that position? So I just love the whole concept, and I thought it was a pretty good show.
While he was playing Joe Hackett, he loved that one airplane. Did you ever get interested in learning how to fly an airplane or anything?
No. I leave that to train. If I could have gone right to jets, maybe. But I actually don't like little planes that much.
Because you hugged that airplane so many times.
I know. I know Joe loved that airplane so much. But that's what was wonderful about him. That was his passion, and airplanes are not mine.
So Tim, you're right over here.
Oh.
Your first Comic-Con, I believe, was in Connecticut, and which happened to be Kevin Conroy's last Comic-Con. Could you share any memories working with Kevin, or any interactions you have with Kevin at your first Comic-Con, his last Comic-Con?
Just that he was such a sweet man, really good guy, and so good at Batman. I mean, I can't imagine anyone even coming close to that iconic portrayal of Batman that he gave. And he was just wonderful. He actually also did me a huge favor. My son and I and our partner Ben Shelton did a series of shows on YouTube that we very cleverly called The Daily Show, spelled D-A-L-Y. And Kevin came and did, appeared as himself, but also reprised some of his Batman vocal technique on that show. So I owed him, a debt of gratitude. That said, I was worried about him. He was, suffering, and he didn't look all that well. And I was so sad for his passing, way too soon.
Hello, Christopher here. I mean, love your wings, love you, Superman. My girl loves you too. Your big talk about family, right? I know it was made like in the 90s, very big, about Jimmy Olsen getting the Superman watch. I know that he can hear Jimmy Olsen screaming he didn't need the watch. But if you think about it, maybe it could have been because he wanted to be the big protector, big brother that he never had. Maybe that's why he gave him the watch, because he can hear him anytime he wants to. He never gave Lois anything, he never gave anybody else anything. Maybe that's why, he called Jimmy Olsen his best friend. He wanted to be like the big protector, big brother that he never had.
I don't think there's a question, but I think you're absolutely right.
Well, I mean, I didn't want to know if that could have been something, maybe that was in a story or whatnot, that you maybe heard or not.
No, I'd never heard of that, but the thing is that there's always room for multiple interpretations of something. So if that's what you got out of it, then that's yours, and good for you.
Because I'm a very big fan of it too, and just thinking about that was just thought of it. If it did come out like that, it would be very awesome.
Cool, thank you.
After the animated series for Justice League, George Newbern took over. Was that a possibility that you would have continued in that role, or were you moving on to other projects? For Justice League, for not doing the voice and George taking over, what was kind of the whole reasoning behind that?
I mean, I was trying to formulate a joke about how I was going to kill George and how jealous I was of him. But the truth is, George is a good friend of mine, and I'm really happy for him. But it was really just a technicality. I was doing a TV series called The Fugitive, and we were shooting all over the United States. And so it was literally, I was so busy, it was so completely involving that I just couldn't even find the time to do it. Because I didn't even know what time zone I was going to be in. So it just became impossible scheduling-wise. So, it was a mutual decision. There was no animosity, but I had to step back.
Hi, Tim. I have admired you since even before Wings. And
want to know, how was it to work with, usually conversating church and the weather? Did you have like an improv type of thing going when you would read the script and put stuff in there?
Well, I mean, yes and no. Our writers were really good, and they were also really good. One of the things that happens when you do a sitcom is that you're liable to do a scene, and then someone will run in and say, do it again, except say these lines. So they write on the fly. So they're sort of improvised as you go along. And we would improvise from time to time, and sometimes they would really like it, and sometimes they would look at us like they wanted to murder us because we were desecrating their beautiful words. But yeah, it was a pretty loose situation. And I'm going to tell you another thing that I shouldn't. But the thing that I found for Wings anyway was that the lazier we got, the better we got at that job. It was so weird because I remember the pilot. I learned all the words and I was ready, and they came into the makeup room right beforehand and handed me 15 pages of changes. And I'd never done a sitcom. I was like, what? I'm supposed to memorize this and do it 10 minutes from now? It's impossible. Anyway, so the less dedicated I got to learning the lines and all that stuff, the better I got. It was because the jokes seemed to have a very short shelf life. And sometimes if we were doing a rehearsal and things went really well, we wouldn't even rehearse it again. We were like, don't dig too deep, just touch it lightly because it works perfectly, and because it gets like digging a well in a bucket. If you go through the bottom, everything falls out. So we just had to touch it lightly.
So that's what I mean. You're such a great actor. You do that. And I saw you in Henry Flamethrower.
Oh gosh.
Oh my gosh. I saw that. My daughter bought me tickets to that. It's like in New Jersey, because it was my birthday that week. And she knew I had such admiration for you. And you are amazing in that. That was like a one-act play. And the sadness, it was, you were just tremendous.
Oh, thank you. So this is a play I did at Michael Imperioli, who was the guy that killed me on The Sopranos. I had this little theater called Studio Dante that looked kind of like an Italian bordello. But it was a really intimate space, like 60 seats. Yeah. Well, thank you for coming. Thank you.
Hey Tim, I am taking some acting classes, so I'm kind of curious. I want to follow up on the start of the century questions. Because you had done Wings, then Superman, you were kind of talking earlier about, as an actor, wanting to get into the whole range of human emotion. So to go from the lighter part of comedy and heroics to Superman, I don't know what other roles you were in there between that and then the Storm of the Century, where you got to go to pretty dark places. I didn't know if it was just the strength of the script that you were kind of going on to do that, or if there were anything that you were drawn on to really sell, just the limit and everything he's got going through that.
Well, here's the thing. A lot of people ask actors how they feel about stuff and how they feel about their performance. And my response to that is, who gives a shit? Who gives a shit how the actor feels? The point is to make the audience feel something. So, I feel like I am in a service profession. And my service is to tell stories about human beings to other human beings who will get something out of it. Whether they learn something, or they have their minds changed about something, or they have their opinions solidified about something, whether they laugh or whether they cry. I'm telling a story that people can identify with. And so however you get there is how you get there. If you have to, think about your dead kitty from when you're a kid, great, go for it. If the words as they are written work for you, then just leave it alone and have that work. But the main goal is to tell a story that has some use and some emotional resonance for other human beings. So stick with that.
Hi Jim, thanks for coming out. my wife and I were just talking, like, what you've been in and stuff. We were Grace Anatomy fans, and we picked up private practice when it became the spinoff. How'd you feel about working with such a large cast, and like at some point you had the spotlight, and at some point you didn't? Did you enjoy that experience?
I mean, I loved everybody in that cast so much. That said, I was kind of like the old fart in that cast, and I found that a lot of times when we had scenes where we were all in this thing together, it became like a cocktail party. And I was like, guys, can we have the cocktail party after work? Because like, we're sitting here trying to make each other laugh for hours, and it's like we're not getting the show made. But I'm sort of old-fashioned that way. I like to like get to work and dig in and do the best I can, and then have the cocktail party afterwards.
Tim, you already mentioned your amazing son Sam, and you mentioned The Daily Show, which everyone should watch. What you have not mentioned yet is the League of Supermen that you inducted your own son Sam into on The Daily Show. And I feel it's been a minute since we've known what the League of Supermen are up to. What are they up to? Are there any new inductees? I think we're long overdue for a cinematic universe or a sequel or something like that.
Well, I couldn't agree more. And we, we're like three Supermen down from the League of Supermen. But that was part of the Daily Show, our League of Supermen, because my bizarro world version of myself was obsessed with Superman. And you're right. I mean, let's go. We got a couple of people to induct into the league, so I'll work on it.
Tim, glad you're here. What was it like working with Bruce Timm?
Well, I mean, I think his work speaks for itself. He created this iconic series that lasted for such a long time, and he's a great writer and has a really, really astute take on Superman. So, it was great. It was good going.
Being amongst the alumni of Superman actors over the years, the latest Superman movie with David Cornsmith, have you had an opportunity to see the film? Or your thoughts on that?
I did, and I was really glad to see it because I was glad that there was a little bit of lightness in it because Superman was getting so dark, and good for Batman. Here's my thing. It's like, here you have Batman, right? Who's this tortured character, like, I'm a billionaire, blah, blah, blah. And there's Superman. Not only did he lose his family, he lost his freaking planet. He's not crying. He's out there doing the right thing, I mean, and so I think there's plenty of room for both, but I think the fact that some people say like, well, Superman is such a Boy Scout. It's like, and your point is like, what's wrong with that? He's dedicated to helping other human beings. Well, I said other human beings. He's not even a human being. So, what was the question?
The new movie and your thoughts on it.
Oh, I thought everybody did a great job. I thought like probably 97% of movies now, it was about 15, 20 minutes too long. But that's just me. I get ahead of these things. I'm like, okay, we've seen that fight sequence a couple of minutes ago. Let's get to the point. But I thought it was great. I really liked it.
Tim, so you said you weren't really into Superman when you were growing up, but obviously you starred as a very iconic character as Superman in the animated series. Was there a moment after the show ended or while it was in production that it hit you like I'm part of something bigger?
Yes. I was invited to the OG Comic-Con in San Diego for Superman's 75th anniversary. And there was a panel that my son was actually on. And I was just invited as a guest, and I was in the audience in this huge convention hall, about 4,000 people. And they introduced me, and I stood up and waved, and they gave me a standing ovation that lasted for like 3 minutes. And I was like, what did I miss? I'm such an idiot. Like, I had no idea that it was so important to people, or the amount of appreciation they had for it. And that's one of the kind of caveats about being in films and television is that that's why I like doing this, because you have a chance to connect to your audience and the people that have seen you and enjoyed you, and to they get to thank you and I get to thank them. And so I wish that I had been more conscious of the effect that I was having on people and been able to be out amongst regular folks, and be able to thank them for appreciating what I did.
Two quick questions for you. Did the David Jansen version of The Fugitive affect a lot for some of your presentation in the character? And the second one, in Madam Secretary, your role somehow, in modern days, it was a miracle. You brought a moral sense and a theological sense into politics. Was that the script, or did you have something to do with that as well? Those two questions.
Okay, the first question, what was the first question? Oh, David Jansen, yeah. No, I thought, I remembered a little bit the original Fugitive, and I loved it, and I loved the movie with Harrison Ford, and I thought, the best thing I can do is to do my own version, because I think there's room, it's kind of like Superman, Superman is a role that's been played by a lot of different actors, and the role is rich enough, the character is rich enough that there can be a lot of interpretations and it can still withstand all those variations. And I thought that The Fugitive, was the same thing. Like it could withstand having a different take. Obviously, in the script there are there are similarities, and basically you just got to stand up and tell the truth as you know it. So that's what I tried to do. And in terms of Madam Secretary, I was really interested. I mean, all the roles I've done, someone inevitably comes up to me and says, "So what did you learn from doing the role? Like, did you learn how to fly a plane from Wings?" No. And did you learn how to be a doctor from Private Practice? No. But I did learn something from Madam Secretary, and that is that ethics, being an ethical person, requires a lot of presence and a lot of examination of your character and your morals all the time, because given different circumstances, your ethics can change. So you could be a person who says, "This is what it is, and this is what I do, and I'll never move off it," or you can be someone who examines where you are and say, "I believe this, and maybe this needs to be altered a little bit. Maybe my belief is a little different." So that's what I learned from that. The other thing I will say about Madam Secretary is that one of the brilliant things about it, and I wish this were true of more of the stuff that we consume on television, is that we never said that anyone was a Democrat or a Republican, not in the entire time. And what that did was it forced people to listen to the ideas. And we had a huge fan base on both sides of the aisle because people were just listening to what was being said and not saying, "Oh, there's a D, they're an idiot. Oh, there's an R, they're an idiot." So I hope that we could, more of us could bring that into our own life, because we all know we're in a mess right now, but we should just listen to the ideas.
I had a question sort of about the difficulties, if there were any, from jumping to on-stage work to in a vocal booth, as someone who performs on stage in high school and now college and wants to eventually do voice acting full-time, if I can swing it. Were there any sort of major hurdles of, like, here's how it works on TV versus working in a vocal booth?
Not a lot. It's just it's kind of like when you go from theater to movies. In the theater, depending on the size of the theater and the kind of play you're doing, you might have to project your voice to reach the back of a 1,500 seat theater, and that's a rare skill that not many people have anymore. Especially because most plays now there are microphones that enhance the voices, but with when you do voice work or TV work, you can whisper like this. You just go right up to the mic. And there are actually a lot of people who employ this thing now that I call whisper acting that drives me insane. Because they just whisper the whole time, like, please pass the salt. It's like, no, you don't have to whisper, please pass the salt. You know, you whisper like, you know, mom's asleep, don't wake her up. But then you say, please pass the salt, just in a normal voice, don't whisper. Anyway, that's just one of my pet peeves.
It's wild listening to you because it sounds like Superman. Like everything you say, it sounds like we're listening to Superman talk. Could you give us a Bizarro?
Oh, Bizarro, boy, I can't really remember, but he was sort of like this.
Something like that. I love doing Bizarro, by the way. I really did love doing Bizarro because it was such a contrast for Superman. The poor guy was such a mess. He was so close, but not really.
How did you like working with Dana Delaney?
Well, Dana's an old friend of mine, and we were actually co-presidents of an organization that I'm still president of called the Creative Coalition, which is an arts advocacy organization. And you know, I loved working with Dana. I wanted to work with her more. I mean, if I had any criticism of the animated series, I thought there should have been a little more Lois and Clark. There was a lot of Superman, but I really liked their relationship, and I thought Dana was very dry and funny and, you know, kind of gritty, and I loved working with her.
I forgot to ask you earlier. So you
Another plain question?
No. Different question, different show. So you said you're going to start this show, Newlyweds. Are you leaving Leanne?
You have to ask Netflix about that. I mean, I would love to go back to Leanne. I had such a good time on that show. She is like, what you see is what you get. She's funny, she's darling, she's modest. I just adore her. So I would go back in a minute, but I don't know.
You're the main reason why I watch that show.
That's so nice of you. Thank you.
Yeah, I watched every episode of Wings and wanted to meet you back then. So yeah.
That's not a question, but thank you.
Okay, as far as the show goes, I think my favorite episode of you was the late Mr. Kent. What was that like, doing the introspective on it, the flashbacks and everything when Clark died?
Yeah, since I did that show, I've done about 4,000 different shows and parts and stuff, and I can't possibly remember how I felt at that moment. But thank you for reminding me. I'd sort of even forgotten that we did that. I would have to go back and watch it, but I'm glad you enjoyed it.
So Tim, you're obviously part of the DC universe. There are a lot of actors that would give their left leg for a role in Star Wars or Star Trek, you know, some of those big things. Have you any ambition to be a Jedi Master or like Star Trek captain or anything of that nature?
Listen, I would love to be a part of something like that. I mean, those things are really cool. That said, the one thing that I will tell you is that there is a direct correlation between the size of the budget of a movie and the amount of time you spend waiting in a motorhome to act. And I am not good at waiting in motorhomes. I really like to get up on my feet and do my job. I really love acting. Waiting around a motorhome is not anything I ever aspired to. So, you know, would I want to be in a big Marvel movie or a Star Wars movie? Hell yeah, because so many people see them and it's such a cool world. But I can also see myself going insane from sitting there going like, when will they finish putting up the lights? I just want to act, please.
Hi, sorry. Obviously, big Superman fan, so thank you very much for doing that. I wanted to ask you about Dusk Malibu and what you thought of Springfield, because that's where I'm from. Don't feel like you need to sugarcoat it, because again, I'm from there.
Well, Springfield, well, first of all, I mean, you know, the people of Springfield were so good to us. This is a tiny, tiny little independent movie that I produced and starred in that is kind of making the festival rounds. It's a beautiful father and daughter story about healing of a really broken relationship. Anyway, Springfield's an interesting joint because the people seem so great, and the town seems a little threadbare, a little sad. It's like, but there's a lot of cool build. Like it just needs something to give it a little spark. In terms of a place to shoot and support from the community, I couldn't have asked for anything more.
When you were recording for Superman, were there any sessions that were strictly just doing like grunts and groans and not particularly like dialogue where they just knocked that all out in one session?
Okay, I was maybe gonna not tell this story, but now I'm gonna tell it because you said that. So, one day I was at the recording booth, and Al Roker, you have him in your mind, Al Roker, who's a weather guy and a newscaster and stuff like that. He was there to interview me, and he was interviewing me, and he said, "So, what is the vocal quality that you use on Superman? What kind of things do you employ?" And I said, "Well, honestly, most of what I do is grunting, straining, screaming noises because Superman's always getting clobbered with a girder or a train or a laser beam." And I said, "Come to think of it, it's a little disconcerting to think that the children of America have a pretty good idea of what I sound like in bed." And Al Roker fell off his chair laughing, and the woman from Warner Brothers was like, "Can we cut for a second, please?" I was like, "Sorry, I didn't mean, am I in trouble?" So they wrote me a nice note saying, "Please refrain from saying stuff like that," and it just came out. But anyway, yes, we didn't do like a day of grunting and screaming, but there was a lot of that. I apologize to all the parents of children here.
I came here today with my husband, who is very excited about the weekend, and I was going to the casino. Wasn't even coming here. I am so glad I came to this. You have been fantastic. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much. That wasn't a question either, by the way.
Outside of the animated series, are there any video games or other voiceover work you've done in that realm?
Not many. I did the voice of the father in My Neighbor Totoro, which was out of Studio Ghibli, which is a great movie. And I'm trying to think. I didn't. No, not really. And it's kind of it caused me a lot of consternation because people say to me all the time, "You should do more voiceovers. You have a great voice. Or how come you're not the voice of this on a cartoon or this on a commercial?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I know." But it doesn't seem to be in the cards at the moment, anyway.
Warner Brothers obviously had the great idea of bringing you back when they did the direct-to-DVD movies and everything, but they've got to put the brakes on that for now. If that should start back up again, I'm guessing you would jump in.
I'm available.
Okay.
Hi, I was wondering if you could tell us what you're most proud of. Could be acting or not acting.
I think I'm most proud of my kids. Somebody said to me once, 1,000,000 years ago, gave me a piece of advice, and it's the only piece of advice that I ever give to new parents. And that is, they said that there's no such thing as quality time. There's just time. And, I obviously haven't been a perfect dad, and I've made a lot of mistakes, but I do feel like I put in the time. And, and the quality will come when it comes. Sometimes it's not there, and sometimes it comes when you least expect it. I'll tell you a quick story about when my son was about 5. We were living in this little house in Rhode Island in the suburbs, and he loved playing baseball. He just got to the point where he could throw a ball. We were throwing the ball in the backyard, and I suddenly stopped, and I got all misty, and I said, Sam, I don't know if you'll understand this, but I got to tell you, this moment, like throwing a ball with my son, you know, it's something that I've always dreamed of. And he looked at me and he goes, just chuck it, Dad. Like, cut the freaking poetry, let's go. Like, no quality time there, right? The next day, we're down at the end of the street, same thing, it's hot, August day, we're all sweaty, we've been throwing the ball for hours. We're walking up to the street and he goes, Dad, I'm gonna keep this mitt for a long time, like maybe 100 years. I said, wow, that's really a long time. You really must love that mitt. He said, yeah, I do. I said, why are you gonna keep it so long? He said, because Dad, someday, I'm gonna take this mitt out of its drawer and it's gonna tell me a story. Right? So, there's the quality time. It's just when you least expect it.
Hey Tim, I just had a question. So, when you said that there was a whole bunch of rejections, like when you're first an actor and whatever, what was the moment, like it'd be Wings, it'd be before that you did it, people were praising it, and you were like, I finally made it as an actor?
Well, I mean, I would have to say that it was my first movie, Diner. And you know, I had auditioned for, this is Barry Levinson's first movie, who's made, you know, one of the great directors, writers in our history. And I had auditioned about 4 times, and then I did a screen test, and I was kind of losing hope. And then I got the job, and started shooting the day after my 25th birthday. And since and before that, I mean, when I look back on the amount of energy that I was expending trying to get going in life, I had a little construction firm in New York City. I was remodeling lofts in Soho and Tribeca, and if you are familiar with New York, you can't think like, you know, hedge fund guy loft. This was for artists back in the day. And so, you know, I would, you know, work all day, take off my overalls, you know, learn lines, go and audition. I was, you know, rehearsing with a rock and roll band, taking 2 voice lessons a week, 2 acting lessons a week. I wasn't sleeping, I was just going like a maniac. And then I got this job, and I haven't had to do anything else since, which is a miracle. So I would say it was that.